we've seen how hard it is to sort of measure public opinion, right? We've seen that people are often reaching into different mental buckets, and whatever's in the mental bucket is based off sort of what they've experienced most recently. But we know that underlying attitudes are stable, so what's happening is these stable attitudes are being brought to bear in very different ways depending on what's being asked of you and the exact circumstances around that question. Now, we're also cognitive misers, so we generally don't want to have to learn more about the circumstances than we absolutely have to, unless we're just interested in it, right? But this has meant that the majority of the public, studies have shown, or at least a famous study showed, doesn't have true opinions on politics, right? Because the majority of the public just isn't that interested in politics, so they haven't really formed true opinions, at least according to this one study. But we keep trying to measure it anyway. And these complications are sort of compounded by the fact that it is just hard to do a survey right? You're basically asking a small group of people for their opinions and using that to extrapolate what the opinion of the entire public is. So we know that if you've done the data literacy extra credit, you know that extrapolation can be really tough. But there are statistical methods that we can use, and if we draw a good sample, or what we hope is a good sample, we can, with a pretty high degree of certainty, estimate the whole public's opinions based on the opinions of about 1,000 to 1,500 people. Now, if we start with one person, who knows if they're going to be representative? If we ask another 9, those 10 people are going to be statistically more representative than one person. 100 are going to be a lot more representative than 10. 1,000 more so than 100, and so on. But there are diminishing returns. So if we doubled our sample from 1,000 to 2,000, we aren't twice as accurate. We're a little more accurate, but not twice as accurate. So we found that sort of the ideal place is about 1,000 to 1,500 people. And this is based on statistical calculations that we're not going to get into in this class about margins of error and confidence intervals. So again, we're not going to get into that, but just know that more people is better, but because the returns are diminishing, we don't always want to go that much bigger because it's just not worth it. It's so hard to get the sample as it is that more people is just not worth it. Now, as it turns out that when we ask these people these questions, there may be inconsistencies, but the aggregate of their opinion actually works pretty well to represent the public. Because the thing is people who don't hold true opinions aren't all going to say yes to a question. Some of them are going to say yes, but some of them are going to say no. Because if they don't have true opinions, they're just going to draw on these buckets and give these answers pretty much randomly. So what we're going to get is the sort of error of these people who don't have true opinions canceling each other out. And what will be left is the aggregate underlying opinion of the people who aren't just answering randomly. And this helps us measure the public's opinion overall. And then we see that if there are big shifts in the aggregate, it means that things are changing, attitudes are changing, or at least how these attitudes are being brought to bear on political questions is changing dramatically and consistently, right? One poll might show this, but if all the polls are starting to show this, we can say that something is changing, right? These opinions are changing for some reason. So in that case, it's not just random error. It's people's opinions are changing. So while not every individual is going to hold a true opinion on every issue, by taking a poll of a larger group of people, a sample of the population, we can aggregate these opinions and see a relatively stable, relatively informed aggregate opinion over time, and that opinion, as it changes, reflects some sort of underlying change.